I don't want to shortchange any of the people presenting today. My name is Claire Shen. I'm at the University of Buffalo, and I am simply the chair of this panel. So the speakers will have 20 minutes. We'll take 10 minutes after each for questions. And our first pair of speakers today are Smiljana Antonijević. I did better when I was just talking with you. And Antonijević, excuse me, and Jeff Ubois. And they will be presenting today on Reinvention, Resilience, Building Digital Libraries for Long-Term Preservation and Access. Thanks. And the panel, of course, as they're getting started up here, is the responsibility of reinvention, digital humanities in the service of cultural resilience. And please use this microphone so that the Zoom crowd can hear you well. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and hello everyone. We are
Jeff Ubois of Federal Library.
And Smiljana Antonijević. I want to say that also our colleague Radomir Stanković is with us online. He is calling in from Serbia, and he will also be able to take some of the questions. So among the questions that we will be talking about how digital practices and methods can be used to mitigate suppression, manipulation, and destruction of knowledge. And among some of the questions that we ask in our presentation today are the following. So what does it mean to digitally revive a vanished knowledge institution deliberately destroyed in wartime, and to reinvent it as a contemporary place of learning, cultural life, and memory?
How might 3D and extended reality reshape public memory in the process of recollection?
And since, from basically, if we look from the Library of Alexandria to the Internet Archive, the libraries have been the target of deliberate destruction and control over access to knowledge. We ask, can digital libraries be made resistant to such harm and ensure inclusive long-term preservation and access? We discussed these topics in our presentation today by looking at a case study of the National Library of Serbia. The library was destroyed in World War II, and it is being digitally reinvented today through our interdisciplinary project From Ruin to Resilience. So to talk about that, let us step back in history into the time when suppression and destruction of knowledge was particularly extreme. Are we, should we try to find a way to move this window?
You should be able to minimize my up there, but there's on the left side. Is that little thing?
So, as I mentioned, we are stepping back into the time when destruction of knowledge was particularly extreme. In January of 1933, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. And only 3 months later, the German Student Union proclaimed an action against the un-German spirit, which culminated in the infamous cleansing by fire campaign, the public and the ritualistic burning of un-German books that took place across 34 cities and resulted in destruction of 25,000 volumes. But this was just an introduction. As Hitler solidified his power and Second World War began, the German regime took a closer and more systematic approach to destruction of knowledge. The Rosenberg Task Force was established in 1940, and it worked to identify, confiscate, and destroy library, archival, and collections and art collections from across Europe. The materials that were deemed important were sent to Germany, while the rest were destroyed. Altogether, 22 million volumes from 37,000 libraries, not including private, were burned, recycled, retained, or sold. The National Library of Serbia, which is our case today, was one of the casualties.
So national libraries developed in the footsteps of religious and royal libraries, but with the crucial distinction of transforming restricted and privileged access to collections into public access. National libraries developed as a result of 19th century nation building with dual internal and external functions. Internally, they were intended to foster educational progress and nation building by focusing on common language, common history and heritage, and externally to symbolize and convey achievements and continuity of a nation. The National Library of Serbia was established along these same lines in 1832, and it housed priceless medieval manuscripts, handwritten books from the 12th century, printed books from the 15th century, maps, journals, letters, and so on. It was a center of Serbian cultural life and memory, and as such, it became Hitler's wartime target. On April 6, 1941, the German aggression against Serbia began in a military operation named Retribution. The National Library was destroyed on the very first day, with the entire corpus, including 1,424 medieval Cyrillic manuscripts, turned into ashes. Today, only a ruin covered in grass, exposing a few bricks and tiles, reminds strollers passing by that the National Library once stood there. At his trial for war crimes in February 1947, the Luftwaffe General Alexander Luhr, who commanded the bombing of Belgrade, said, "During the first attack, we had to destroy the National Library, and only afterwards the objectives of military interest, because that building housed what for centuries represented the cultural identity of that people." The example of the National Library of Serbia and other libraries and archives destroyed in World War II is far from unique. Similar cases of intentional destruction continue to this day, including the invasions of Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Ukraine, and most recently Palestine, where a set of cultural heritage and knowledge institutions have been destroyed. For instance, the Omari Mosque and Library, which was built in the 7th century and contained one of the most significant collections of rare books in Palestine, was completely destroyed, as were the Al-Isra University Library and the National Museum, the Nerhud Library at Al-Azhar University, the Gaza Municipal Library, the Central Archives of Gaza, and so on. But attacks on libraries and archives don't happen only in war zones. The US has also become a battle zone, or battlefield, focused on controlling access to libraries through book bans, censorship, and lawsuits, such as those unfolding against the Internet Archive for its controlled digital lending program, which ensured equal access to knowledge during the COVID-19 lockdowns. Contemporary attempts to suppress knowledge and to control who has access to it increasingly rely on digital technology and are supported by some of the most powerful capitalistic forces in society. When major American publishers like Simon & Schuster are owned by private equity firms like KKR, it changes their mission. Private equity, I think, hates public benefit, public libraries, and public knowledge. Yet digital technology can also be used to reconstruct cultural heritage and to mitigate the suppression of knowledge, for example, with AR and 3D technologies, as well as with decentralized web and distributed preservation technologies. Among the digital methods of providing and preserving destroyed or vulnerable cultural heritage, 3D reconstruction is recognized as particularly useful. The European Commission recently encouraged EU member states to digitize in 3D all endangered sites by 2030. Digital reconstruction of destroyed and or painful cultural heritage memory sites have a well-established record in the digital humanities, exemplified in projects such as the Auschwitz Historical VR reconstruction, the Temple of Bel in Palmyra, and they are comprehensively studied in a recent edited collection called Difficult Heritage and Immersive Experiences. Relying on digital technologies and 3D reconstruction, our interdisciplinary project From Ruin to Resilience, Digital Revival of the National Library of Serbia, is building a digital repository and mobile app that will enable users to re-experience and reimagine the destroyed library. The project is carried out within the Archimedia Group of the Mathematical Institute of the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts, and it's been supported in part by the Filepoint Foundation for the Decentralized Web.
So in the project that Jeff just mentioned, these are some of the main questions that we are asking. So how can we reimagine a destroyed knowledge institution not as a digital resurrection of the past, but as a breathing, living, and constantly evolving cultural and intellectual space oriented towards the future? How can values of the digital age, such as decentralized web and personal digital archiving, be incorporated into such a space? And finally, how can we build both the technical infrastructure and the community promoting libraries that cannot be burned or destroyed at the order of government or a single individual? So to address those questions, we combined historical, archival, and ethnographic research with technological innovation through three interconnected areas of activities. One set of activities includes archival research and digitization of relevant primary sources. Thus far, we have identified more than 1,000 important materials to be digitized and made available in an open access way. For example, there is the largest remaining collection from the destroyed National Library of Serbia, which survived the bombing by being donated to another institution and moved before the bombing. That's one set of materials. The second is German soldiers' personal photographs of the Belgrade bombing, which are quite specific soldiers' awareness of the attack targets and damage. One additional source that we are looking at and seeking to digitize is wartime newspapers, which also has a set of very interesting articles about the National Library, such as the decision of the occupation government from October 10th, 1942 to sell the destroyed library remains at the public auction. So now, another set of activities includes ethnographic research and enables us to understand how the repository and the mobile app we are developing can best reflect users' sentiment, needs, and aspirations. Thus far, we conducted 20 in-depth interviews with experts such as librarians, archivists, historians, as well as with general public, and we carried out 4 site visits with observations and contextual inquiries. The goal of these research activities was to understand experts and users' expectations related to the digital resource we are developing, and to translate the feedback into actionable specifications for the development team. Some of the main findings of this research include for experts and for general public alike, one of the main expectations is to get a detailed and accurate 3D reconstruction of the destroyed library building with extended reality capabilities that would enable users to virtually walk through the library. This aspiration is largely prompted by a strong experience of the void that our respondents face daily when passing by the site of the library ruin in downtown Belgrade. Being able to walk through the digitally restored libraries that's much more than a learning opportunity. Our respondents perceive it as an emotionally restorative experience of feeling a painful void. Closely related to this is the aspiration of connecting through time with ancestors and fellow citizens who frequented the library before World War II. While our respondents expect the digital resource to provide them with access to bibliographic information and possible copies of the destroyed library materials, they equally want to know how the library lived. What were the habits of the library patrons at the time, what were the most popular topics and books before World War II, and so on. So again, it is more than a curiosity about the past. It is a deeper form of remembering people who lived and died at that time. The application we are developing is also seen as a very useful resource for using the youth not only to the destroyed libraries, but to the importance of cultural heritage, libraries, and reading in general. Finally, in addition to official archival materials, traditionally seen as the most authoritative sources for exploring, recalling, and understanding the past, our respondents want to see materials from personal archives, letters, photographs, diary records, and so on. This reflects our respondents' aspiration to uncover and highlight history from the bottom up, seeking out how ordinary people lived and acted in the past.
The third area of activity we're focusing on is technical development of a digital repository and a mobile application. Recalling and understanding the past is one thing, but ensuring that our descendants can do the same is another. For that purpose, we're exploring new approaches to personal and community archiving. Rooted in social history is history from the bottom up. Personal digital archiving focuses on such non-deposited sources, emphasizing the existence of multiple pasts and highlighting underprivileged, dissident, and sometimes undesired pasts that never found their way to the official archival or institutional record systems. Personal digital archives matter. Because today, culture and science are born digital. Today's Einsteins and Rembrandts work digitally. Yesterday's scientists and scholars are rapidly being digitized. And we're recording all the time, more than 1 billion camera phones that are sold every year. The corollary to that is that public and historical events are captured by people, by citizens, and the personal is becoming social and collective. Community archives are one manifestation of that. Personal and community archiving are thus central to our project. The digitally reimagined National Library of Serbia seeks to augment the selective tradition of librarianship by empowering individuals and communities to contribute materials to a digital repository. Thus far, we've developed a prototype of the mobile application, which provides access to the segments and materials on the founding and destruction of the library, literary funds of the National Library, Serbian writers, and partial 3D reconstruction of the destroyed library itself. Through further development, the app will enable users to digitally walk through a fully reconstructed library building to interact with the library in new ways. For instance, in addition to electronically checking out and downloading materials, users will be able to upload their materials from personal collections. With the application, we aim to strike a balance of being state-of-the-art and yet accessible to the general public, ensuring that the reinvented library is accessible, exclusive, and open. The last pillar of this work involves decentralized storage. Perhaps the best-known decentralized storage project right now is Lots of Copies Keep Stuff Safe, which was started more than 20 years ago by David Rosenthal, one of the founders of NVIDIA. But the idea of decentralizing storage, of distributing information around the web so that it cannot be willfully destroyed or censored, is now a practice that has itself been widely recognized as an approach to preservation. It's a kind of fireproofing, a way of ensuring that collections survive, even in the worst of times. So we've been exploring ways to decentralize storage of the repository by means of FilePoint's open source decentralized network, where I've been advising. FilePoint's storage network is based on the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, a peer-to-peer network for storing, sharing, and preserving data in a distributed file system. While IPFS provides object storage, FilePoint provides archival storage, payment mechanisms, and storage contracts, meaning that entire collections can be stored and retrieved. The FilePoint network provides data mirroring and immutable public record of all actions, and so on, promoting decentralized architecture that prevents any individual, corporation, government, or other actor from centralizing control over architecture, protocols, or content. In that way, the FilePoint decentralized network provides a system resistant to centralized failure, censorship, or destruction, and brings us a step closer to reinventing archives, libraries, and other knowledge institutions for long-term preservation and access.
And I will show you just very quickly. This is actually a prototype of our mobile application. You can see some of the elements, and here is our we will of course be working on developing this further, and here one early possibility to get into virtual reality and construction, and to see the building and to walk through it. So just to wrap up our presentation today through the case study of the National Library of Serbia, our project of digitally rewriting the destroyed knowledge institution, we seek to bring attention to suppression and control over access to knowledge happening all over the world. We illustrate how personal digital archiving can be used to empower individuals and communities to contribute their experiences, materials, and aspirations, highlighting underprivileged, dissident, and other undesired paths that never found their way to the official institutions and archival records. We also demonstrate how 3D reconstruction can reshape public memory and bring an emotional restorative experience of filling a painful void. Finally, we illustrate how decentralized digital preservation can provide a system resistant to centralized failure, censorship, or destruction, ensuring long-term preservation and access to knowledge. These are some of the references. We thank you for your attention and we welcome any questions that you might have.